In this special episode, we talked to school board candidate Michael Morrow. From the Panther Eye, this is RNL.
Good afternoon, Mr. Morrow.
Good afternoon. How you doing?
I'm good. I am here to ask you a few questions today. The first question is, why do you think you're the best candidate?
Well, I'm going to say, I know one of the questions I briefly saw about, I've been on the board for 20 years, and with these unprecedented times, I believe experience is going to have a big impact on our school moving forward. Last year we had 2 new school board members with they now have 1 year under the belt, and we're going to have a brand new one for sure if I win. So almost majority of the board would have 1 year or less of experience. And when I first got elected to the board, I took the training through the New York State School Board Association. And every seminar I went to, they stated it takes about 2 to 3 years before you really know your way around and how you can benefit the school, the students, and the community. We're with this crisis that we're having right now. We have to protect our programs. We have to come up with a financial plan, which is still uncertain through the state and the federal government. And I think my experience is going to be a great hand working with the rest of the board members.
The teacher union endorsed you. What would you say to the voters about the value of that?
Well, I consider him as a teammate. As I said in my opening statement at the Meet the Candidate night, that when March 13th or 15th, when they closed the schools, the whole staff, the Sweet Home staff, had to step forward to move in a different direction. The teachers had come up with a new teaching format with distant learning. The transportation still had to do some rerouting to distribute the meals, and the food service. They're making 4,200 breakfasts and lunches every day. Our custodial staff had to work on sanitizing every building. The buildings and grounds still had to maintain the building. So I consider the teachers and service employees and administrators, we're all one team. We're working for one goal, and that's for every student to succeed at Sweet Home.
The district is likely to face fiscal difficulties due to the pandemic. Does the district have a plan to deal with that?
Yes. We by regulation in New York State law, we're allowed to have some reserve funds, and reserve funds are targeted for certain areas, like what Proposition number 2 that's on the budget vote. The budget vote is Proposition number 1. Proposition number 2 is to do the construction in the high school to take care of the flooding, and we had a reserve fund to pay for that. So it is taxpayers' money, but it's not being added to the tax bill. So that's one reserve fund that we can have, and we have I believe $1.5 million in the reserve fund, and we're going to use $700,000 with voter approval to do that project. So we do have some leeway with some of our reserve funds, and we've been doing that for, well, again, I've been on the board for 20 years, and if we had any surplus at the end, it's always been tucked away into these certain reserve funds that we can use for, as we always said, for a rainy day, but this year it's going to be for emergency funding.
You were a Sweet Home parent. How has the district changed since then?
Well, I'm going to say I'm still a district parent. My son is a music teacher at the high school, so I can still consider myself a parent. I'm going to have a grandson attending Maplemere next year, so I'm not going to be a parent, but I will be a grandparent. But how it has changed, I see. Well, I think the curriculum. I know the curriculum has gotten harder. The mandates from the state testing has made it a lot more difficult moving forward. Each student has to pass 5 Regents exams. That wasn't like that when my son graduated in '96, so that was the last change. The other change I have noticed too is that I've always belonged to the PTAs. I'm still belong to I'm a liaison to the middle school PTA at the moment, PTSA. And it's always a struggle to find parents to get involved in their students. And I think we're always looking for ways how to incorporate the parents get involved in their child education. It's still a struggle, but unfortunately, this COVID-19 has opened a lot of doors, and we're hearing a lot more from parents and their input about their students' learning. So, and plus, social media has changed a lot since 20 years ago.
You're this year's only incumbent and have been a school board member for 20 years, longer than any Sweet Home student has been alive. How do you think your experience will help you serve as a board member?
Well, I'm the only board member on today's board that's retired, and the best advantage I see, and it's advantage of being a senior citizen, I guess. But I visit the schools during the whole school year. I go to the 4 elementary buildings. I go to the middle school. I go to the high school, the Ready Academy, and I do take visits to the transportation and the food service. 2 years ago, I was able to take our student rep to the food service and buildings and grounds and the transportation. So he got a different perspective of the different operations in the school. I have to, again, I'm going to go back by experience. I'm involved in the schools. I get it. I visit. I visit the kids who are learning as a second language English and the special ed. And I have I have one niece that's and a nephew that's in special needs program. So it's always nice. I take a big interest in our program here at Sweet Home. They're in Pennsylvania, so I'm always comparing the two programs. And New York special ed program is far better than Pennsylvania. So I think my continued involvement with the schools is a benefit.
What would you say are the things that you are most proud of as a board member, and what would you say you are least proud of?
Well, the Unified Basketball and Bowling League was when we had our first basketball game at the high school was 2 years ago, and the whole student body was there, not only cheering for the Sweet Home kids, but they were cheering for the other team too. I mean, I had tears in my eyes. That's one of the proudest moments I can remember in my 20 years. It was just great to see the students, everybody supporting each other. Uh, Going back, I guess, you talked about being on the board for 20 years, and I don't remember all the kids, but I've gone to some of the classes when I first started, 18 years ago, and I might have visited your classroom when you were in whatever elementary building. So graduation is another great moment, proud moment at Sweet Home. You get to hear everybody's name, you hear the parents' name, you hear their ambitions, what school they're going to go to, and their accomplishments. So to me, that's another proud moment because it shows that what we've been doing at Sweet Home is making our students ready for the future. The least proud moment I was going to say is it's been 5 years ago when when they put Heritage Heights up for maybe for closure, and we had 2 months to make that decision. Again, with this parents stepped forward, we had the staff involved, administration involved, and it was a very anxious moment for not only for the parents but for the young kids that thought they were going to be closing their school. Other than that, I can't think of any weak moment that we've had at Sweet Home. I still think with the diversity we have in our school, it's one of the best.
Where did you work before you retired?
I worked at Niagara Mohawk. I worked there for 42 years, which is now known as National Grid. I did the environmental work for the whole western region, from Buffalo all the way to west of Rochester, down to the Pennsylvania line to Lake Ontario. I managed the handling and the disposal of all the hazardous waste and non-hazardous waste in Western New York. We started when I first started back in '75 in that job. We had 6 people in that department, and by the time I retired, we were down to 2. So we were covering more territory than before. But I've always been a believer in saving the environment, and I have to say, National Grid and Niagara Mohawk did a great job of managing their waste, whether it's non-hazardous or hazardous, and very little waste went into a landfill. They did a great job. I was just part of the team.
That is all the questions that we have for you today. I would like to thank you for your time, and I wish you the best of luck.
Okay, and I do enjoy watching. I go on the internet and I look at your newspaper all the time, the Panther Eye. So you guys do a great job with that newspaper. Okay, thank you for asking the questions.
Thank you.
The ballot deadline has been extended by Governor Cuomo to June 9th for hand delivery and June 16th for mail receipt. This gives everyone some extra time to mail in their ballots.